So Bob emails, what do you say?
Yeah.
This is a Bobisode, maybe? Because we have Rebecca-sodes.
Rebecca-sodes.
And I guess Berta-sodes, and we are now in a Bobisode. Anonymous middle-tier patron from Utah, she says, "Hi, Kirk and Bob. I was raised Mormon, and I found that it may have made me incredibly anxious about seeing nudity on TV and in movies, specifically when seeing it with other people. Meaning, watching a TV show or a movie. My self-esteem isn't great, and when my partner goes to the movies, I find myself Googling the movie he's seeing to screen it for nudity." So just summarizing here, Mormon, Utah, anxious about seeing nudity on TV and movies, even I think when she's by herself, but even more so when she's with other people. And it sounds like her husband will see a movie without her, and she will feel that anxiety about, what if he sees nudity? And she says her self-esteem isn't great. "I have this intense fear that if he sees another woman naked, he will realize he doesn't want to be with me anymore. This causes me a ton of pain, and I was wondering if you could dissect how Mormonism ties into this and how I can handle this fear, both on my own and with my partner. Thank you." Bob, what do you think?
Well, I guess my first thought is, does Mormonism tie in with it? Do you notice this with your friends that are Mormon? Do they have similar kind of fear? I know that Mormons, they wear that garment. Mm-hmm. You know about the garment?
Some Mormons,
right? Yeah. And when I think about the garment, I think, so this is like, I don't know a whole lot about it, but the garment is linked to spirituality and linked to relationship with God.
And purity and chastity.
Right. And you're wearing something that covers your body. Like, there's a premium on covering your body. So that can't be great because, we're born naked, right? I mean, what are you going to do, right? Yeah. So
there's enough body shame and sex shame in our society anyway.
Yeah. We just.
It's just like another layer to that shame. Literally,
yeah. So, so you could ask your friends if they have similar kind of fears, but I really think you just should talk about it with your husband, and you might experiment with getting naked and asking him, "Hey, what's hot about me? What do you find sexy about me? What turns you on when you look at me?"
If that's overwhelming, what would be a small step in that direction, do you think?
Do it clothed. Am I pretty? Are you attracted to me? Can you tell me one thing that you like about me? Whatever. Maybe they'll say they like your boobs, or they like your eyes, or, you have pretty hair, or who knows what, right? Or probably a lot of things.
Do you do anything like this?
Do I do anything like what?
Like what you're talking about?
You mean, do I ask Colleen what's attractive about me?
Yeah. Or do you have any self-esteem or body shame issues? Yeah, I do too. But yeah. What do you do? Do you do anything?
I live as though I'm a head in a jar.
So you don't practice what you preach.
I didn't have a fear, man. I didn't write in.
Well, I'm just saying. I'm not saying anything about you.
I know.
But I will say that it just occurred to me now.
Yeah.
What I do.
What do you do?
I have the same baseline amount of body shame, I think, as anybody does in our society.
Right.
People might be surprised that middle-aged men would feel that way, but everyone does. You can't get away from it.
Yeah.
There's different versions of it, of course, but my general feeling is that everyone has in our society a fair amount of the standard body shame, meaning that unless they are of a certain body fat percentage and a certain beauty standard, and for guys, it's all about abs and muscles and chiseledness. Mm-hmm. But even those guys, you talk to them and they're often riddled with body dysmorphia and insecurity.
Right.
So they have you coming and going. And one of the things that I do that I think I was doing mostly unconsciously is specifically, I will be getting ready to make a reaction video. So I, like right now, in my typical at-home uniform, I wear jeans and a t-shirt. So I will get ready to watch a reaction video or make a reaction video, and I wear polo shirts usually, or a nicer shirt.
Right. Yeah.
And I will sometimes be in a situation where I will take my t-shirt off and I'll have to walk to my other closet to get my my nice clothes. You know? And I'll be thinking, I have to walk through my house without a shirt on.
Yeah.
Should I put on a robe? Or should I bring the shirt with me?
Yeah.
Or should I run so my wife doesn't have to look at me? I mean, that's literally.
Yeah.
You know? And then I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Because even if I am disgusting, this is who I am. And I need to be okay with it. At least I need to be okay with it.
Sure.
And I'm pretty sure everyone else. And another part of me is like, look, if my wife isn't used to this body yet, then it's time for her to get used to it. So if she comes around the corner and sees my love handles, then it'll just help, I think. I think familiarity helps. You know what I mean? You get used to something and you settle into it. And so for myself, and I don't know if my wife even cares, but I'm sure she does on some level. But, you know, I'm doing everything that I can within reason. It's not like I don't know. And so I'll walk around and sometimes I'll lean into it.
Yeah.
And I'll say, you know what? I'm kind of hot. You know, I'm like, I've been running around all day. I don't actually want to put a shirt on. Maybe I'll start sweating. Yeah. So I'll let this thing breathe.
Yeah, man.
I'll let this body breathe. And so I'll walk upstairs into the kitchen. I'll make coffee. Yeah. Sometimes I'll be completely naked, not in the kitchen.
Oh, why not?
But if I'm walking from the shower to, you know, and I don't want to bring my robe with me or something. And, you know, Stacy will be outside with the dogs and I'll just take that opportunity to walk around the corner and just wait for her to come around the corner, you know, and partly as a joke. And she'll do this to me too, as well. You know, your old dick presses and your boob presses occasionally. And it's, for me, I think, an unconscious and semi-conscious attempt to break me of my own body shame.
Yeah, right.
Because I only get one life to live. I get one body to be in. Yeah. If this is the way that it is, and if I could snap my fingers, things would be different. But that's just not going to happen. So I'm just going to have to say, this is what it is.
This is what it is.
And I choose to like it. Yeah. I choose to say, this is what I am, and I'm okay with. I'm not telling anyone that they have to be lustful over it. I'm not telling anyone that they have to look at it. But at least I have to be okay with who I am. I don't want to live my life constantly ashamed of reality, you know? Yeah. It's similar to all sorts of identities, whether it's the fact that as an Asian person, as a kid, I would try to stretch my nose out to make it look more white. I would sit in front of the TV and hold my nose because I hated that I looked Asian, you know?
I'm sorry.
It's a very common feeling for a lot of Asians, by the way. And fuck that shit. This is my fucking nose.
My good friend Jim Hashimoto, when I was a kid, I envied his nose.
And that's the thing.
Yeah, we all like what we don't have, right?
Well, that, and most of the time, especially when it comes to bodies, particularly our spouses, are like, are you kidding me? I want to get up in that shit all the time. Isn't that apparent? Like, you're crazy talking. This is what? No, you're attractive. I love you. I lust after you. I was up in that shit last night. You know what I mean? And so, like, no, like, is that not? Have I not proved to you? Yeah. So, do you do anything like that?
Well, I walk around naked in my house as a regular thing. In the middle of the night, go in the bathroom. I don't wear any clothes when I go to sleep because I get so freaking hot. We run a fan all year round because I get so hot.
Well, you have really thick blankets on your on your bed?
No, we got rid of them.
Oh.
Yeah, we have thin blankets now, but I can't even sleep under a sheet. I get so hot.
Oh. So even in the winter,
Yeah.
do you have the heat just cranked?
No. The heat's not even on in my bedroom. Yeah. No, the fan runs. The heat's not on. I'm way too hot anyways. This happens to me every night.
And Colleen is okay?
Yeah, she sleeps mostly okay, though.
So it's mainly like she wants it a certain temperature, but you would rather have it be colder. So if you were by yourself, you'd open the window or something.
I'd probably open a window. Though I do open the window a fair amount anyways.
That would drive me nuts if I was too hot.
Oh, yeah.
When I get too hot.
Yeah.
I'd rather be too cold in bed.
Yeah. Well, too cold, you can just stick another blanket on. And occasionally I do get to do that.
Everyone's imagining you naked right now, by the way.
Well, God love them. You know?
Because I didn't know you'd slip naked.
Yeah.
So I'm just, you're kind of so for everyone out there, Bob's kind of a hairy guy.
Yeah.
He's upper echelon.
Yeah, not Tom Selleck hairy, but you know.
You're in that direction.
Yeah, in that direction. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Anyways, I don't wear pants in the evenings. Like when we're winding down, 9:30 or 10, I take my pants off, and then I take my underwear off.
Why? There's something so common. Wait, so before you go to bed, you take your underwear off?
Yeah, and I'm walking around. I wear a
like
t-shirt.
Donald Duck,
like Winnie the Pooh. So I got to get up and get some snack or whatever, and I walk through the house like Winnie the Pooh.
Oh, right. So you wind down in bed.
Yeah.
So that it's not like you're on the couch and you're like, getting ready for bed. Got to take my underwear off and my pants.
Only when people are going to come over.
So this is in bed.
Yeah.
And you take your pants and your underwear.
Yeah.
But you leave your shirt on.
I leave my shirt on. Winnie the Pooh.
So is it a restriction? Because underwear isn't particularly warm inducing.
I get sweaty. In all the crevices. Yeah. So, yeah.
Wow, people are really picturing it.
Yeah. So, right. So I just, I just don't give a shit. I have no idea if I'm sexy. I don't like being noticed. So if Colleen were to say something about it, I probably shrug it off because it'd make me anxious. Though I don't think that's a very good thing to do to your spouse. So, work on it, Bob. But I don't have a tremendous amount of body shame.
That's good.
About stuff like that. I have some shame around like sex and whatever. And like, if we're talking about this vessel as an erotic instrument, then yeah, I get kind of wigged out.
I wonder if it's your family. Because your dad walked around naked a lot, right? Not naked, but you've told some really humorous stories.
Interesting stories about my dad's behavior when we was kids, yeah.
Yeah. And I also wonder if your family culture, similar to mine, where you have 6 people in the family, 4 kids.
Right.
And there's not really an opportunity for privacy.
Oh, I shared bedroom with my 2 brothers my whole growing up life.
That's right. I forgot.
And my sister, she had a room because, she's the only girl.
You shared a bedroom with your 2 brothers your entire life.
My bedroom was probably like a third of the size of this room.
I mean, that's nuts to me. I didn't share a room with anybody my entire life.
Right.
That's just so weird.
Yeah, no, bunk beds. And at one point we had four my parents, we had a foster kid in our house for about 18 months. And so there were 4 of us in that room. So Danny and we slept in the same bed and then my brother and the other kid.
So the foster kid was a boy.
Yeah.
If it was a girl, then would have been with your sister.
Well, at one point my parents were going to adopt this girl. And so she and my sister shared a room. Man,
your sister must have been the envy of all 3 of you boys.
I always felt bad for her because it's lonely in there and she's in there in the dark and, like it's scary in the dark and,
Okay. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, there's pros and cons.
Right.
But given that upbringing, and it was, although we had our own rooms, didn't have a lot of room to be private. And we lived in a family that had doors open kind of policies. Like it was pretty rare for anyone to close their door.
Oh, yeah. I never closed my door.
Yeah. I mean, you could close your door if you wanted to, but it just wasn't really necessary or considered important or something.
My parents closed their door, I think.
My parents didn't even close their door.
Wow.
When they went to bed.
Wow.
They would be having sex. Like, I mean, I'm not entirely sure about this, but...
We should phone them up.
My memory is, I've talked with them about it, is that I would, in the middle of the night, I would have these weird episodes, and I would also get anxious sometimes. And so I'd go into my parents' room in the middle of the night and just check in with them or ask them to come. You know, I think I'm like 5 years old.
The usual,
And I remember one time, you know, just pushing the door open, it's ajar, and just kind of sleepily walking in. And as I'm walking up to the door and walking into the bedroom, I can hear what I thought was my mom laughing. Because that was the only interpretation available to me.
Uh-huh.
And I'm thinking, oh, that's funny. Like my dad must have said a funny joke.
Uh-huh, yeah.
And then I get up to the side of the bed, and my mom's side of the bed was closest to the door. So I'm walking right up to that side of the bed. And I say, oh, hey, Mom and Dad, you know, and my parents, my dad's on top.
Yeah.
And they're under like a sheet.
Yeah.
But they stop. But I don't know, because I'm so young.
You're 4.
I don't know what is, I have no basis for understanding any of that. And they, you know, sort of rewriting the history in my head, they freeze because they're like, oh my God, like, because they're concentrating, right? And then all of a sudden their son is like,
this is like
right there, like within a foot or a foot and a half, you know what I mean? Like because they're right on the edge of the bed and I'm right there.
Right there, yeah.
And I can still kind of see that my mom's knees were kind of up. You know what I mean? But again, I have no basis for understanding.
No, I get it. Yeah.
And my dad's like kind of stammering, and my mom's like, "Oh, I think I might have asked, like, what are you doing?" And my mom said, "Daddy said a really funny joke. What do you need, honey?" And then I said something like, I can't sleep. And then she said, well, you know, and all she would have to say is, well, how about you just lay down and see if you drift off or so. And I'd be like, oh, okay. And I turn around and then years later, that occurs to me. Again.
Right.
And I'm like, holy shit, they were having sex. Right. And I just walked in.
Yeah. Right.
So it was that kind of family, you know, I would come around it was completely okay to walk in on my dad while he was on the toilet.
Oh, uh-huh.
And have a conversation with him.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of a Japanese thing. I'm not sure.
Oh, is that right? Yeah.
Yeah. Japan has a completely different understanding about
like bathroom etiquette.
Body and also like family body things. Like bathing, you will take baths together as a whole family naked, you know, because it's fine. The onsens, the public baths, the hot springs, you know, you'll see guys just totally okay walking around naked, you know. I did that in Japan. It was quite liberating. And Korean spas here in Seattle for women, it's naked people. Yeah. It's just a different understanding, you know. We come from one of the most, if not the most body shaming, sex shaming societies that's ever lived on this planet. Like we're worse than maybe England is similar to us. I don't know, but I could see the United States being worse than even England. I mean, that's where it comes from, the Victorian and the Puritans, you know. And it's only getting worse, I think. I think it's only getting worse in our society. So that's amazing, though, that you walk around like Donald Duck. And
Winnie the Pooh.
And Winnie the Pooh. Both of them. And
it's a running joke at my house.
But then you take your shirt off when I go to sleep. When you finally go to sleep.
Yeah. I was last week. I was walking around the house. Colleen's like, Winnie the Pooh, Winnie the Pooh.
Okay. So getting back to anonymous middle tier patron from Utah.
Yeah.
She's asking about being anxious. So you're saying to talk with him about it, and also maybe have some more self-esteem about your own body.
Well, I don't think you can just, have self-esteem, but there are things that you can do. Like there's a research study. Oh God, everything I know is years ago, but women in inpatient eating disorder clinic were asked for 5 minutes a day to take their clothes off and look in the mirror, and while doing that, suspend thought, as best they can, but just pay attention to what what they actually felt like in their bodies as they looked at their bodies in the mirror for 5 minutes a day for 3 weeks. And at the end of that, most people reported a significant reduction in body shame, as you could expect. You just sort of get used to. So I had a client years and years and years ago who I told that to, and she had some, a lot of anxiety and shame about her body. And I said, okay, well, you want to do it? And she wanted to graduate it. So she's like, okay, I'll take a sheet and I'll put it on my left shoulder and wrap it around my right hip. And I'll look at everything from there up and leave everything there down, clothed. And great. And then the next week she comes and she's like, it was too awkward to hold. So I just dropped it and looked at it. And she's like, you know what I discovered? My boobs are lopsided. We had a little chuckle about it. And, she was like doing great. She was moving herself through body shame, because it's, as you say, this is what I got. This is my body, So you might consider, exposing yourself to, what you look like in a mirror. Maybe you could also look for the things about you that you think are attractive. Like, my husband is lucky because he gets, why not, right? So, but talk to your husband. I think it'd probably be a good idea to experiment with being naked, but if that feels like too big a bite to just start with, then just work your way up to it. And same thing, like probably your husband has body shame too, so you could ask him about it or tell him what you think is hot about him or attractive or whatever. And, why not? Like underneath our clothes, we's all naked. Mm-hmm. So...
Yeah, I think another aspect to it is what we consume in the media.
Oh, yeah.
I think another aspect is to appreciate one's body.
Yeah.
So much of our concept of our body comes from the way it looks from the surface.
Yeah.
But if you think about all that's involved in the body.
Oh, it's trippy.
The digestion tract alone, the magic of the digestion tract, the magic of our nervous system and our brain and our ability to fight infections. I don't know the exact statistics, but from what I understand from biologists, our body is fighting infections constantly, not just like a virus that happens to be moving through a population, but there's a constant invasion attempts from bacteria and other viruses that our body is so effective at managing. And the fact that we can move and we can talk and we can do all these various different things. I mean, even if you have a physical disability, you still have a lot of abilities left, you know what I mean? And when I think about that, it makes me appreciate my body in a whole different way, instead of just as something that looks good or bad in a two-dimensional Instagram post. Also, if I use my body, like if I'm just gardening or something, and I am able to get down into the dirt and plant something and move around and sweat and feel like I can still affect the world, it's when you lose certain abilities like that, you learn like, why was I so ashamed of my body before I had the ability to? So, appreciating all these things, I think, reorients our notions and our vibe about our own body.
Right. My knees are shot. Like I have a hard time getting up, and like I was on the toilet the other day, and the other day was this morning, and I can feel my knees creaking. I can't kneel down and then stand back up very easily, and that's relatively new. I'm 50, almost 57, and maybe 3 years ago, that I wouldn't have noticed anything like that. But like I've been doing a lot of house projects where I'm on my knees quite a bit. Crawl space in my house is no place to go. But sometimes one has to go down there. I cannot move like I used to.
Yeah.
Even 4 years ago.
Yeah, I've noticed that for myself too.
Right. My elbows, yeah.
Seems rather sudden, honestly.
Yeah.
Like running feels different.
Oh,
too.
I haven't run a step in many years.
Yeah, running feels it feels really strange, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's only downhill from here.
Yeah.
So appreciating those things.
Yeah, right on, man.
Helps us. But to answer your question about Mormonism, anonymous middle tier patron, yeah, I don't know your particular experience, but with a common experience with being raised in a Mormon community and family, but also in other evangelical or other fundamentalist communities, perhaps Catholics. And that's kind of the word that I would focus on. Is it Mormon, is it Catholic, is it Muslim? It's how fundamentalist is it? How traditional is it? And not all traditions are the same, of course, but often the more fundamentalist, the more traditional the group is, the more body shaming, the more sex shaming, the more sex control, the more misogynistic and sexist it is. And a common theme across all the fundamentalist sects that I know, which are ever growing. Did you know that? Like, religiosity is declining in the United States, but fundamentalism is increasing. So there's fewer religious people now than 40 years ago. But overall, there's a greater percentage of fundamentalists.
Oh, they're taking up the lion's share of who goes to church.
Right. So I don't know the exact percentage, but say, when we were a kid, say 10% of religious people were fundamentalists and 80% of people were religious. Now you have like maybe 60% are religious, but of those religious people, like 70% of them are fundamentalists. It's become mainstream. It's become normalized, which is bizarre. Every movement of society, you'll see this when you start to lose ground, or you feel you're losing ground. You have to in-group more. You have to hold the ground more. It feels more threatening, so you have to double down your belief system, and so there's a lot of that happening. And one of the aspects of that is that you hold girls, not women necessarily, women too, but you start early with girls. You hold girls accountable for sex.
Oh, it's unbelievably stupid.
Yeah. If a boy looks at you with lust because you're showing your arms, I'm not even joking, then that's your fault. It won't necessarily be worded directly like that, but sometimes it is. I did the deep dive on IBLP, which is an evangelical area. It's an evangelical
IBLP?
thing. IBLP, no. I can't remember what it stands for off the top of my head, but it's a huge movement in the center of the United States among evangelicals, and it's indistinguishable for me from a common Mormon theme as well. And not all Mormons and not all evangelicals, of course. So with these children, they are being indoctrinated and shamed from day one. It's one thing to grow up in a more typical religious family or a mildly religious family and be mostly saved from that kind of messaging until you hit puberty, and then you start interfacing with society and you start getting all those messages.
Yeah.
That's horrible in and of itself. But it's another thing when you have parents and church leaders and friends and the books. A lot of these kids are homeschooled, so they are isolated from everything. And there's all these messages around if a boy lusts after. So there's so many messages that are taught. One is you're disgusting. Two is it's all your fault if someone rapes you or lusts after you. Three is you have to cover your body because it's inherently of the devil, kind of. 4, boys can't control themselves.
Yeah,
and
that one's just hard to take.
Yeah, we understand that. That's just a given.
Yeah.
Because in that messaging around you have to cover yourself up is it'll be your fault because I've already told you, we've told you 10,000 times over that if you show skin on your body, no one can blame anyone else other than you for having tempted this boy or this man. And so it gives a strong message to everyone, including the boys, that no one has control unless you constantly repress and shame yourself and control. It creates this really weird dynamic for a child that they have this extremely complicated relationship with their body and with sexuality and gender that could manifest in a variety of ways. And one of the ways that I've heard it manifest is exactly as a middle tier patron is talking about, where one, you feel that you're not good enough. Two, that when your husband is walking around in the world, I mean, this is an extreme example of this, like you're taught often in these fundamentalist circles that if your husband sees like your sister wearing a tank top, that he's going to automatically lust after her and maybe even sexually assault her, because that's just how men are. Well, to think about your husband seeing a naked woman, my God, right? Like he must be compelled towards that person, because men can't control that. The devil is constantly trying to push men to act. The devil is always there. It's always waiting for an opportunity. And if this is the thinking. If you expose yourself to these kinds of temptations, the devil will figure out a way to punish you and to drag you into hell, literally. And these church services, half the time, there are these stories. People will get up on stage and there's a lot of redemption, born again stories. This is more indicative of evangelicals, but I imagine Mormons have it as well. Of, let me tell you my story. I lived a worldly sinner's life.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And I went, and fine, whatever. But if it's constant, right, and it's always the message is, I made a mistake. I chose to watch pornography. I chose to have premarital sex. I chose to not go to church every Sunday or something. And look what happened to me. I ended up in jail, and I lost a leg or something or whatever. But here I am, born again, and you hear those stories constantly. You are in a constant state of fear for yourself and everyone that you know, that if you take your hands off the wheel for a second, or you turn your gaze away from the hypervigilance of the straight and narrow, that you're just a hair's width away from falling into not only just like sin, but like eternal damnation. And that's what you're told from day one. Fear, control, fear. Your body sucks. Men are lustful. Fear, the devil. And then your husband goes to a movie with nudity. I mean, it's no wonder you're anxious.
Of course, one might ask oneself then is, what am I telling myself about the attitudes of men?
Yeah.
Like I'm telling myself my husband is going to go to a movie and see some woman in the whatever, and that they're going to, want to fuck that person or lust.
Even so, what's he going to do? Call the actor?
Well, right. But it's sort of like, it sounds to me like there is a shadow side here, which is, what do I tell myself about my husband's attitude? What am I telling myself about who's in control of his feelings, right? Like a pair of boobs is going to make him, jump ship and be unfaithful. Like, really? Was that in the vows? Mm-hmm. Like when he stood there in front of you and everybody you guys know and you guys got married, was it sort of like, well, I better look after this guy because, he can't control himself? Like, it's kind of insulting.
Mm-hmm. It's terribly insulting. Yeah. I mean, I don't know about this husband, but this sort of talk, which I'm guessing you're feeling too, is incredibly sexist against men. This notion that we're basically just animals. Yeah. And this notion is out there. I rant about this a lot when on reality TV they'll talk about how men and women can't be friends.
Oh, yeah.
That stupid When Harry Met Sally bit. And I'm like, so let me get this straight. You believe, including a lot of men apparently, that, because it's always that way. It's always, the guy who wants to fuck her. Let's be honest. And I consider that to be so disgusting. Might that happen some of the time? Yes, it happens.
Of course.
But it's also the other way around in heterosexual people that are friends across gender. By the way, also, the premise is so stupid, because what if you have bisexual people? They can have no friends because they might be attracted, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, everybody knows that.
If you're pansexual or bisexual, like you can't have any friends, because if there's even the remotest statistical chance, you know what I mean, that you might be attracted to someone that has that presentation, then it will manifest. Lust has no specificity.
Pheromones are the devil.
So it's incredibly stupid.
Yeah, it's really silly.
The other thing is you could go to your husband and say, if it's overwhelming to you in the short term, you could just say, hey, this is me. I'm sure it's nothing, but I'm terrified of you going to a movie with nudity in it. It's not rational. It doesn't make any sense, but I have some issues. I'm working on it. And if you could help me out by not going to movies with nudity in it, it would help me. You don't have to. I'm not controlling you, but while I'm working on this, if you could please do that, I would much appreciate it. You can ask that. And if Stacy asked me that, I would say, absolutely. Why do I care about that? And then I certainly don't want to trigger you, or let's talk about it or whatever. So it doesn't mean that you have to suppress it or control it or shame yourself for having these feelings. You can just, there's a possibility that you do a lot of work on this and yet you just never in your lifetime manage to get over this issue. It's not a huge request to your partner that they refrain from that. You're not yelling at them or saying they have to do it. You're just inviting them in for empathy so that they know what affects you and they're not being blamed for it and they care. So they're like, oh, well, that's not a sacrifice to me. It'll limit me a little bit, but I certainly don't want to trigger whatever trauma's happening for you. And okay, I won't do that.
Might be hard if you're Roger Ebert, but other than that.
Yeah. And honestly, I feel like growing up, if there could be nudity, there was nudity. I feel like today, I'm trying to remember the last time I saw just like classic nudity.
You mean like 80s?
Well, not that style, but like, I'm just trying to think of I feel like sex scenes were sort of the saxophone solos of movies in the 80s. In every song in the 80s, you had to have a guitar solo or a sax solo.
Sure.
And you always had to have a sex scene. I always think of Top Gun with Tom Cruise.
Kelly McGillis, yeah.
And Take My Breath Away. Yeah. And it's pretty long sex scene, right? It's not nudity, I don't think.
No, it's all in
They saved
silhouette.
that for the homoerotic volleyball scene.
Oh, sure.
But it's a lot of blue light in my head silhouetted, and they're kissing in the bed,
Yep.
I feel like they don't do that anymore. Don't you think?
Well, we just saw a film. I'm trying to remember what it was, and there was a tremendous amount of sex in it.
Well, Poor Things.
Oh, that was what it was. It was Poor Things.
Yeah, but that's different, right?
Oh, totally different. Yeah, that was more social commentary.
It's not made for sexiness.
No.
If anything, it's made to disgust. You know what I mean?
I thought it was a great commentary on sex and our attitudes.
How so?
Well, because she's completely devoid of all the messaging and is able to look at sex as this capacity that gives pleasure and has none of the hang-ups associated with it. And so therefore she is free.
Yeah.
I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have to say, we were sort of like, well, there's a lot of sex in this movie and, yeah. But it, I kind of go back and forth. It's like, they say, well, does the sex advance the plot? I don't know. It makes me uncomfortable.
In that movie, they say that?
No. That's what people say. They say
about other movies.
About well, the sex was in it. Was the sex integral to the story, or was it gratuitous? Clearly it was integral to the story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. All right, let's take a break.
Yeah.
All right, we're back from the break. Let's do an OPP, Bob.
All right.
These people became patrons all the way back in 2021, and these are all people who didn't list where they're from, so they're from God knows where. We have Emily and Kristen and Margaret and Mary. Margaret and Mary Sally and Alejandro and Faye and Neil and Aina. That's a nice name, Aina. Oishan or Oisian. Julius, Holly, Maddie, Janina. That's a nice word. Nice name. Chloe, Charlotte, AC, Viviana. That's a nice name. I mean, all these are nice names, but some of these names I've never heard of. Well, Viviana. I don't feel like I've ever heard of Viviana
Vivian,
before.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Viv.
Anne-Marie, Jacob, Joyanna. I've never heard Joyanna before. Someone named Me, another Chloe, Morgan, Carolina. We have a Charlotte and a Carolina. Huh. We have a Warren, a Rachel, another Chloe. There are 3 Chloes on this list. What's up with Chloes and not wanting to list where they're from?
Must be a thing.
We have Derek, Elise, Wooly, and Jamina. By the way, maybe I should give the last name of the Chloes so everyone knows. I'll do initial. Chloe N. Chloe with no last. Oh, there's 2 Chloes with no last name.
Or is there just one?
Man, these Chloes, they sure like to be under the radar. You know what I mean? I'm not going to tell you what city I'm in, and I'm definitely not going to give you my last name.
Yeah.
You people. I'm just joking. The bottom line is y'all have been patrons. 1. 2, you've been patrons for almost 3 years now, which is incredibly amazing and wonderful. Next email, middle tier patron Trina from BC. She says, I won't read her email, but I just want to tell Trina that I read your email. It was a very moving email. It was an email about how the podcast has been a part of her healing process over the past 5 years. She didn't ask any questions, but I just wanted to say thank you to Trina for the kind email, and I'm so glad to hear that you're healing and you're finding yourself. The next email is from patron Joan from Indiana. She writes, I'm already working with a mental health therapist, by the way. I have complex trauma anxiety, and I am operating from a place of mild dissociation all of the time. That sounds rough. My question is regarding the 5-4-3-2-1 grounding technique. Have you heard of this?
Yeah, 5 things you see, 5 things you hear, 5 things you smell, or whatever taste or something, and then 4, and then 3. Is that the one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she says, when I use it, my anxiety starts to go down and my mind becomes more present. However, becoming present is one of my triggers. So when I'm about a quarter of the way through the process, my anxiety comes bouncing back even harder and louder. Is there something I can do to mitigate this process? My goal is to be able to be present enough to do EMDR for my trauma. So, Bob, what do you think about that?
I don't know. You sent me this question, and I didn't know what to suggest. It sounds like...
Have you heard of this before?
No. But, I mean, it makes sense.
Well, I thought you had, because as for some people, when they become more mindful or more focusing on their thoughts, or they try to relax, it can have the opposite effect.
Oh, yeah. I think you're mentioning, you're talking about relaxation-induced anxiety, which
this kind of sounds like what it is.
It sounds like, yeah, but hers isn't about, as far as I can tell, it's not about her body relaxing. It's about not being distracted from or disconnected from whatever the present moment is, and then connecting with the present moment is provocative and sends our body into a state of fight or flight, which sucks. The only thing I could think was just practice and chip away, but small bits. You don't want to do any, tear-stained marathons of trying to be in the present moment, just scare the shit out of yourself. Plus, you probably fail anyways because your body will just check out anyways. So, but I wondered if maybe like just hit the sweet spot. Like if you get to a place where you feel relaxed or feel present but not triggered, stop there. Don't if it takes 5 in the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, then just stop at 5, and maybe just chip away at it till as your body learns that now is not then, now is not dangerous. Mm-hmm. I don't know though. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. From the sound of it, my first hypothesis, because I've worked with clients like this, is, and I've had mild moments like this myself, that there's something about moving away from the distractions,
Yep.
as you're saying, Bob, that will bring what is just behind the distractions into the fore, which is the panic or the fear or the danger feeling. The feeling of the danger, the noticing of the danger, doesn't mean it's a new danger. It just means that you're now noticing it.
Well, you're not noticing danger. You're noticing
Fear.
Yeah, yeah.
Your body thinks
Arousal,
that there's
yeah.
danger.
Yeah.
And you will, by the way, I read online, someone was complaining about their therapist using the word arousal
Oh, yeah.
because they
Sounds-
only think about arousal as sexual
Sexual.
arousal.
Yeah.
But arousal just means physical arousal, meaning heart rate going up, sympathetic nervous system. And they were very put off that their therapist kept using the word arousal, and they thought it was inappropriate and crossing a boundary.
Huh.
And I'm like, everything is a sexual innuendo. Moist is now off the table, even though moist is a very important word. What else? What other word are we supposed to? The replacement words are kind of wet, but you can't even say that. You can't say wet anymore because that's a sexual innuendo.
Huh. Non-dry.
But even that, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, the opposite of dry. Like, what are you supposed to say? And I know language changes, but when you eliminate the options of communication because everyone's mind is in the gutter, and mine is too, kind of, but let's not all become 13-year-olds, you know? So arousal and, I interrupted you, I think.
No, way too sensitive about such a word. Anyways, we were talking about the person who's like, their body goes into a state of arousal whenever they dial into the present moment, some aspect of the present moment. Hey, the one thought that occurs to me is it a particular sense perception? So is it like when you pay attention to what you hear, does your body have a reaction, or was it what you see? Or is it just the act of shifting away from, the ether of distraction to any aspect of the present moment, like what actually does it? So anyways, chip away is the best advice I can think of.
Yeah, the best advice I can think of is to, with your therapist, attack it from a lot of different angles, because you cannot do any sort of trauma therapy, including EMDR, if you cannot relax. You have to be able to affect your distress. If you cannot even begin to do that, then you cannot start trauma therapy. You will be harmed by it. A major component of EMDR included is while you are exposing yourself to the trauma, you have effective methods, maybe a dozen effective methods at being able to notice your distress level and lower it. You're not going to be able to get rid of it, of course, but you can bring yourself from an 8 to a 3, for example. And until you can do that, you cannot start EMDR or any sort of trauma therapy. So this should be attacked from a lot of different angles, and I assume there is a way.
Try experimenting with ice.
Yeah.
Ice is interesting in that it will focus you on the present moment, but it also has the impact of turning on your parasympathetic response, your calm down response. So you could experiment with holding ice in your hands, or putting a bag of frozen corn over your eyelids, or dunking your face in a bowl of ice water, or going from a hot shower to a cold shower. That'll wake you up in the morning. Ice could have its own particular effect. You might consider that.
Yeah. And to just be specific about the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 technique, it's name 5 things you can see, then name 4 things you can hear, then name 3 things you can feel, then 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. And you might actually have to taste something. What this does for many people is it puts them in their body, takes them out of the future and the past,
right,
and helps people to ground themselves. Dissociation typically is helped with grounding. There are many other grounding techniques, but they're all kind of in this category. So what my first hypothesis is, that I don't think I finished saying earlier, was that you will be normally in a constant buzz of anxiety, but it's tolerable-ish. Then when you start to do some of these grounding techniques, it has this effect of bringing that fear feeling to the fore. In all likelihood, if you just keep doing that, I think as Bob was getting at, as long as it's tolerable, which is important, and I would do all this with your therapist, then on the other side is relaxation or something other than that immediate danger. It's akin to, like, I think about my brother who got in a motorcycle accident and he went into shock and he got to the hospital and got assessed and the ER doctors are looking him over, and then they left him on the gurney, sitting on the gurney for a second. And they're like, okay, we now understand the situation and we'll take care of you and let's do this, let's do that. The doctors walk away, and that's when my brother had a panic attack, and I think might have fainted or something.
Poor guy.
Because his body knew, I can't feel the fear yet. I need to hold on. And then when his body had the opportunity, the safety, the space to feel the anxiety, that's when it kicked in. It was inevitable he was going to feel that anxiety. When you're in a constant state of trauma and danger, then you might be in that state all the time. And when you stop and actually slow down and pay attention to your body, you might have that feeling. That doesn't mean what you're doing is bad. My brother having that experience on the gurney doesn't mean the doctors failed. It means the doctors succeeded because they gave his body a chance to say, you are now free to have your emotion. So have whatever it is. And then you have the emotion, and on the other side of that emotion is some other experience. And I don't know, again, you would really want to, Joan, you really want to talk with your therapist in detail about this, but what I'll hear from clients is they'll say, well, if that feeling, it's coming on, I feel like that I'll feel that feeling and it'll destroy me. They sometimes they don't really even have phrases, but
not language for it, but a sense of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'll either destroy me or I'll feel it forever.
Right.
And I'll tell them it's impossible. No one in the history of humankind has ever felt that level of fear chronically every second for the rest of their life, or no one has begun to feel sad and cried, overwhelmingly and never stopped crying. Some people cry for 5 days. Apparently that's what they need to do. There is an end point to it. It's usually a lot shorter than that. So be okay, and again, talk with your therapist about this, but like our talk earlier about trusting your body and liking your body, like your emotions. It sucks. Fear sucks. Sadness sucks. It's not a good thing.
Well,
not
pleasant.
Well,
it's a very good thing, but it's not pleasant.
And it's life, though. And to avoid it is to often have it just build up more and more and more. But again, I talk through. Let's take a break. What do you say?
Oh, wait a minute. One more thing about ice. Don't do that thing with ice if you have a heart condition, because you can induce a heart attack. So if you're not heart healthy, don't do that without talking to whoever your medical person is. Chances are, if you're heart healthy, it's just the polar bear club. It's just that stuff.
Right.
Yeah. So,
you're talking about ice. How?
Like if you stick your face in ice water, or
I thought you were just talking like holding on to ice.
Oh no, holding on to ice probably not dangerous. I mean, it's just like a snowball, right? Nobody. So, but yeah, if you're going to use ice in those ways, then make sure you're heart healthy before you do it.
Right. You've done that before.
Done what?
The ice thing on the face.
Oh yeah, many times. I use it for insomnia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you do?
You get a bowl and you fill it with ice water and you hold your breath and dunk your face for 30 seconds. Or you take a bag of frozen corn and stick it on your face. Make sure you get your eyelids hold your breath for 30 seconds. And it helps your parasympathetic nervous system switch on and help your body settle down.
Right.
So,
right.
Good for states of arousal.
So why would it help with insomnia?
Your body relaxes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the idea is that with your insomnia, your body might be in a state of
like worry or some kind of arousal. But yeah, and so if you can settle it, then
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, walking around your house with no pants on and no underwear and being aroused, and, it's making a lot of people moist right now. All right, we're back from the break. Let's do another OPP. I keep wanting to do OPPs because I keep forgetting to do it. And so when you're here, I often remember.
We always do them when I'm here, yeah.
So there's people also from 2021 and also from God knows where. We have Sammy, Elisa, Verena, Nina, Anna, Tasneem or Tasnime, Sunita, Dora, Theon, Julia, Jeannie, Yemi, Steph, and Jessa and Kate. Thank you so much for becoming a patron and staying a patron through thick and thin. The next email is from middle tier patron and YouTube member Mary from Arizona. They say, Bob, I want to thank you for the cameo you sent me a while ago.
You're welcome.
It was so thoughtful and truly touched me in a moment when I was struggling.
Oh, that's nice to hear. Thank you.
I've started working with a new therapist now, slowly transitioning away from my previous therapist. I think things are going well. We're building trust, but I can see that we have made progress regardless of the trust not being built yet. Another note for both, maybe both of us. A while ago, I reached out with a lengthy question. A while ago, I emailed you too about a lengthy question in a moment of crisis about providing support to my abuser. So I think this email was them emailing us saying that they wanted to re-engage with their abuser and they were unsure if they should or something like that going on with the email. I just wanted to let you know that my acute episode of self-sacrifice has passed and these tendencies have gone back into remission. And I am no longer contemplating putting my mental and physical safety at risk by opening the door to that abuser. Thank you both for everything that you give to all of us. I find your content wonderfully healing, and I listen to it so frequently that I'm starting to have trouble finding patron-only episodes that I haven't heard yet. I have some lighthearted questions that derived from a very silly lunch meeting I was at. So here's the question. If all diseases in the world were coming to you for therapy, which ones do you think would be the most emotionally healthy?
Common cold.
Why?
I don't know.
Yeah. It's a hard question to answer because a disease that is emotionally healthy, and you start thinking, well, it'd have to be maybe something that is not severe, but then you think, well, is that really the only, do we say like a more chronic cancer is emotionally unhealthy if it was personified, right? And it just feels like that's kind of a funny way. So the road I went down was, well, what disease is actually an indication of our body trying to tell us something?
Well,
and the thing that popped into my head was chronic back pain.
Oh, yeah, repressed anger.
That is at least seemingly connected. Like, there's a lot of people who suffer from chronic back pain. And as someone who has suffered from chronic back pain myself, I can tell you that, you do too?
Yeah, testify. When
you raise your hand, Bob, on the podcast, people, they can't hear that.
Where's the camera? Where's the camera?
So it is something, it's a real thing. It's not, quote unquote, all in your head.
No. Psychosomatic doesn't mean I made it up. It means that it lives in my body and it has at least some of its roots in my psyche.
Yeah. Next question. What are your favorite comfort food recipes and will you share them with us, Bob?
Colleen makes the best oatmeal cookies. And then the last 2 weeks, she's made these really delicious lemon bars. And then last night she made jambalaya. Oh, that was really good. Comfort food. Well, I love a steak, a good filet mignon, though you're not supposed to eat beef because it's bad for the world, but they are delicious. I like me a good beer. That's a good comfort food.
So how do you prepare your raisin bran and your filet mignon?
A medium rare on the filet mignon. Usually do it in a skillet, but one with little grill markers, not flat. No, you can do that. Raisin Bran, 2% milk.
So
Right.
filet mignon, just that's all you do is just
Oh, salt, pepper. That's it.
okay.
Yeah. And some people are real funny about the salting. They say don't salt it before you actually cook it, but I haven't noticed a difference. If you just get the temperature right, it takes care of itself. So
And spare no detail.
and don't try to guess. Like a meat thermometer is a very good invention for making sure you get the meat cooked properly. Not too much, not too little. But I know people that they do the feel method or the sight method or whatever. I can't do that. A meat thermometer saves some bacon.
Yeah, with filet mignon, it seems like it'd be particularly hard because it's such a huge block it's a cube.
Yeah,
kind of.
They're varying, but yeah,
With a steak, it's relatively thin.
thin and
so
maybe an
you can-
inch. Yeah. Good fillet might be 4 inches thick, and yeah, you want to.
So spare no detail.
Yeah,
Your recipe for Raisin Bran.
Raisin Bran, Post, not Kellogg's and not generic.
Classic.
Classic. Good sized bowl, 2% milk. Go. And I don't like waiting until it gets soggy. I'll just mow on that instantly.
How much milk to cereal ratio do you get?
Okay, so let's see. Let's say it's just a regular old, say, soup bowl. Kind of a deep bowl. You want to fill it to about 2/3 cereal, and then just get the milk up so that it's maybe an inch from the top.
Oh, you like to fully submerge.
Oh yeah. You got to have your good ratio.
Because for some things for cereal, for me, I want to get the milk to touch the top layer as I'm putting the milk in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It sort of
So you wanna-
glances off.
Yeah. And then
But the milk only comes up halfway up.
yeah, I
The
think
cor-
that's too dry. I think you should probably rethink your milk strategy.
So for me, my comfort food is, I guess I would say spam musubi as a Japanese
of course.
American.
Yeah.
And I make it a little different than others, but I use sushi rice like everyone else would, and it has to be cooked right. It's strangely difficult for people to cook sushi rice correctly.
I couldn't do it. I tried for months. I couldn't do it. And then Colin got me a rice cooker, and that does it a hell of a lot better than I ever could.
Yeah. Rice cookers definitely make it easier.
Yeah.
But my wife, when she tries to make sushi rice, it's apparently harder for her. And the new rice cookers are actually really confusing to me. The buttons and the timers.
Yeah.
I like the classic where it's just one button.
Uh-huh.
And it has this mechanism inside to measure the amount of water in the bowl.
Right.
Because it's boiling it off.
Right.
And once it has ran out of water, it kicks off.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to have the right amount of water. And there's all these different ideas about rinsing the rice. It also has to be the right kind of rice.
Yeah.
Which isn't always easy to find
No.
in stores.
It's true.
But anyway, so that I don't prepare it like sushi rice. Like I used to, but I don't use the vinegar and the sugar and the salt.
Oh, you don't use that?
Yeah, because of the rest of what I put in it is I use barbecue sauce, Bachan's barbecue sauce, which has vinegar in it anyway. So now musubi usually has barbecue sauce, but I find that I don't need to make it anyway. Plus, it's just a lot of effort, like making proper sushi rice for sushi with the vinegar and the sugar and the salt.
It is.
It's a whole. You have to use a fan and there's all these kinds of things, and I don't think it's necessary really.
Yeah.
So I use Korean nudity, Korean seaweed sheets because they are flakier and I like them more, although they don't hold together as well. So you have to be good at managing that. But some Japanese nori is too thick. It's almost leathery in a way. Mm-hmm. And with musubi, typically you're wrapping the whole thing in nori, and so if it's tough, it can be tough to chew. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so I usually use Korean nori. And then I use, again, Bachan's barbecue sauce, and I use cream cheese, which is a very Seattle thing to do. And then you use your fried Spam.
Do you mix cream cheese in with the rice?
No, I will put the
nudity down, then
Yeah.
then the rice, and then I'll drizzle on some of the barbecue sauce, and then I put like a line of cream cheese, and then I put on the Spam on top.
Got it.
And then you put everything together.
Right.
Next question, I imagine, is more just for me, but the question is, if you had to do a podcast from a cabin in the middle of the woods without access to research materials or patron questions or the internet, what would you podcast about? So when I got this question, I thought, well, this won't be that hard to answer. But when I thought about it, when I really put myself in that position, it was actually really hard to answer this question, which seems weird, right? Because you would think, well, I don't need the internet. I don't need patron questions. I don't need research materials to podcast about something. But when I really thought about it, I thought, I don't think I've ever done it that way before. Because sure, if I don't have emails, I do plenty of podcasts without emails, but I'll have research materials. I'll have my books, and I'll also have my documents that have topics that I've not been able to do yet. You know what I mean? You know, like if I wanted to do a deep dive on a personality disorder, it would be hard for me to feel confident just riffing about it. I'd want to look up the research and refamiliarize myself with the specific language around the symptoms. And so then, yeah, I was just thinking, if I was just sitting in a room in a cabin in the woods, and I had no access to my library and no access to the internet, I'm like, oh my God, what would I do? And what I thought was that I would just make a podcast about being disconnected from the grid. What that feels like. It'd be a lot of like blogging, I guess, just like, here's my experience. And maybe I would sprinkle in some clinical stuff that come to mind, but it would be weird. And I guess it gives me more respect for the numerous content providers that do content that way, where they can manage to be interesting and entertaining without having those prompts. And it really just points to how I operate from prompts. There's so much to do, I don't know what to do. And so I need a prompt, like an email or a request or a poll. I'll take a poll, like what's the next deep dive? Because I want to do so many things, I get overwhelmed. I don't know where to start. So I'm just like, point me in a direction. Mary had a number of questions. I'm combining a number of emails, so I thought I'd get them all out of the way here. They go on to say, I'm curious if you have any experience with individuals using service animals to help manage and treat the symptoms of psychiatric diagnoses like PTSD, autism, etc. Bob?
Yeah, not autism, but a few times along the way when I was running DBT skills classes, people would want to bring a service animal in, one that they were using to help with anxiety. And in general, I think they are a mistake. And I think that what they can do is they can prolong symptoms of anxiety. And so I'm really cautious about I usually what I used to do is I used to just educate. I'm like, okay, yes, the ADA rule is, and you can do this, and we don't know that other people in the room won't have trouble with the allergies. So, my preference is that you not do it, but it is, of course, your right to do it. And then the downside for you is the research on safety cues is such that they prolong anxiety. So, for instance, I had somebody who many years ago used to carry lorazepam, which is kind of like a Valium. It's in the same class of drugs as Valium, in their purse, just in case they had anxiety and they hadn't used it for years and they were reluctant to let it go. And what happens is if you keep a safety cue, you teaching your brain that you need this arbitrary totem in order to prevent yourself from having anxiety. You're creating a condition under which you couldn't live without anxiety if you don't have the thing with you. So that's artificial. That keeps you stuck. So I am cautious about that. Now, that said, I read recently that, folks coming back from the war were having service animals as like companions, and I was thinking, well, that sounds different because that's not about helping to manage anxiety. That sounds like I give myself a focus for love. Like, I love this little critter and I think that's probably enormously healing, so I'm for that. But if it's just for anxiety, I think that a service animal is very similar to any kind of totem. They keep you stuck.
Yeah, you've talked about this before, and I think usually say something like, well, there's nothing like having a benzodiazepine on hand if you need it.
That is true. There is nothing like it.
Thinking about it more as you're talking, I think I like where I landed in my head, and let me speak it now and see if it makes sense to me as I'm saying it, and to anybody else it might make sense to you, is that I think that if it's an effective coping skill and or it's a transition into less anxiety overall, then you definitely want to do those things. Because what we don't want to ask people to do is just grin and bear it.
Oh, no.
You need to find the things that work and employ those things, and don't feel as though you're weak for using effective ways of reducing your anxiety. Having said that, for some people, including myself, if you have a lot of it, it's sort of like with agoraphobia, that if the way agoraphobia usually will develop is that, and this isn't the way it always happens, but something like this, where you can have a phobia about vomiting in public. Right. That is completely irrational on a number of levels. And so you experience this anxiety and you have a freak out one time, and then you make a plan. You're like, well, I'm never going to go on an elevator because what if I'm stuck in the elevator and I have to vomit? So I'll always take the stairs. And then you take the stairs. And then you're on the bus and you're like, oh my God, what if I have to vomit? And then I can't go on the bus now. I have to walk, or I have to do something where I can get out very quickly. Well, you keep going down that road, and eventually you're never leaving the house.
Yeah, your world shrinks.
And if that's the road you're going down, that will not serve you. Yes, by not going on the bus, your anxiety is being lessened. But
sort of
overall, right, your anxiety, I guess, is still present, but you're experiencing it in a less acute way that day anyway. But the anxiety itself is remaining. You're just becoming more and more limited in your behavior. So with a service animal, if your animal is a part of that overall direction as a totem, as what Bob is saying, then you're not doing yourself any favors with that. But if it's a road to wellness and you're not, or that's all you need, like having my service animal with me is the only thing I need, and it generally works, and this isn't a path where I need an animal, and then I need 3 animals, and then I can only leave the house under any circumstances if I have the animal. I have to go into surgery with the animal. I have to go to the bathroom I have to shower with the animal. This is absurd, but if that's the path, then when you started the path by having a service animal, it was not a healthy direction for you. It's fine to everyone else because you're not impacting others with it really. But I mean, aside from the animal, I suppose. So I think how does that sound?
I am not rigid, and it's not for me to dictate what people do with how they live. And so, somebody does something and it works for them, then who am I to say otherwise? I think in my younger days, I used to be more hard ass about such things and like, oh no, if you're doing this thing and it leaves you vulnerable to anxiety, then you shouldn't do it. Yeah, probably you can make a case for it, but life's too short for me to get in anybody's grill about what they do. And if they wanted advice, I'd ask them a few questions, and then people decide for themselves what they want to do. So I'm cool.
The last little bit here is I've been listening. Oh, and my answer to the question is no. I can't recall having ever worked with a client that used a service animal ever in my life.
Yeah.
I have worked with people who did animal therapies, like with horses.
Oh, yeah.
But
I've heard of that.
I've never had a client that asked for or had a service animal as part of their thing going on. I've been listening to some of your conversations about discomfort with taking up space. I think this is to you, Bob. And I'm wondering what you think of a particular brain trick some of my friends use. The trick works like this. In order to get themselves to feel comfortable stating their needs, they basically try to trick their own need to accommodate others by telling themselves that other people will be uncomfortable if they don't state their needs. I found this line of thought helpful for interrupting the train of thought that makes me uncomfortable with taking up space. Does that make sense to you, Bob?
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic idea.
Have you ever done that before?
No. But this morning I said to Colleen, can you make me coffee? She makes me coffee every morning. And she said, yeah, I was going to do it when you got in the shower. And then she said, thank you for asking. And I realized, yeah, I have a really hard time asserting, and it actually is really good for Colleen and also for my relationship if I just state my needs or wants. So I agree with the advice. I think it's I don't know that I would call it a trick. It's really, because a trick I think is sort of, a lie. That's the way that word lands for me. But I think that the statement of the part of the purpose of that, recognizing that when I state my needs, it makes it easier for the people around me, is actually a fact.
Yeah.
So I like it.
Right. I'll speak for myself in relation to you, Bob. It's pleasurable to me when you make your needs known to me.
Hey, can you pull my finger? I hear you. I mean, I hear you, right? Yeah.
It's actually, by accommodating me, it's not accommodating me.
Yeah, right.
It's actually bothersome. It's
Right.
distancing.
Yeah.
It's frustrating, really.
Yeah,
because I'm like, one, I'm not the enemy. And two, I don't want to feel treated as though I'm a danger.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I understand it, by the way.
No. Yeah. Right.
It flips everything on its head, really.
Yeah, right.
I'd rather, I guess, be annoyed with you inserting yourself or requiring things of me or even complaining to me than the opposite, which is me getting this feeling like you're just trying to placate me all the time, or you're just like not really there.
Right.
Is it a trick? Yeah, I guess not specifically, but it could reorient someone.
Yeah.
Now, at the end of
That's a good word for
the
it.
day, if it's still accommodating others by not being accommodating, then you're still kind of being, but it's a good interim step. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, another way to word this, which is usually the way I word it, is you're giving me a gift by trusting me. We say this to our clients.
Right.
And by asking me to do something, or by giving me the gift of your needs, the vulnerability of that, the responsibility of that, it's the trust in that is an honor. It feels good to be needed. It feels good to be, reached out to, depended on, It's not a burden, It's not a unwelcome thing. I want depth. I want realness. I want authenticity. I want connection. I want interdependency. When you depend on me, then it makes me more able to depend on you.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, I can only depend on you if you never impose your needs on me.
Right.
It's the opposite of that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I'm saying this to Bob and to everyone else out there, and really to everybody, because I'm telling this to myself, that I will think of it that way myself as well, kind of in a different way. It's more of the avoidance side, where I'm just like, I don't have any needs, so why would I say anything that I need? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know that one. Yeah.
But boy, do I have needs, and vulnerabilities and emotions and
Man, are you freaking needy?
and turtling goes back into its turtle. All right, that does it for that episode. Thank you for all the questions, middle tier patron and YouTube member Mary from Arizona, and everyone out there. Unturtle yourself, especially while you are whinnying the pooing, and take care of yourself because
You deserve it.